Hello and welcome to the Service-Based Business Society podcast. I am your host, Tiffany-Ann Bottcher. On our weekly episodes, we will dig into everything you need to know about scaling your service-based business without losing sleep. With my experience in creating over 7 figures per month and a passion for marketing, finance, and automation, this show will provide tangible tips and techniques for scaling your business. Let's get started. Hey guys, welcome back. We have a special guest today, and today we are joined by Samantha Jaras. Now, she is a business efficiency consultant with a focus on cutting the BS out of your work days so you can enjoy more freedom at home. Sam is a Dubsado and ClickUp wizard, mom of 2, and total book nerd. Using the Purposefully Productive Method, she helps agencies and service providers to grow and scale their businesses by developing simple systems and leveraging the right tech to save days of time without the stress. All right, guys, you know that I love everything systems, business efficiency, and books. However, Sam likes one thing that I am not so into. If you guessed it, it's Instagram. So Sam also hangs out and spends a lot of time on Instagram. We won't hold that against her. And we're going to welcome her to the show and dive right in. It's so nice to have you here and catch up and whatnot. So tell me, what's been going on in your business the last little while?
Yeah, well, it's been a roller coaster for sure. A good one. I'm excited about the uphill for sure. For those that don't know, I am an operations consultant and specifically strategizing on the CRM side of things and project management, ClickUp, things like that. And it's been really interesting. I've been shifting into the consulting side of things and the pivot from done for you and really being a solopreneur into being a CEO, hiring my first full-time employee. Like, that's been really fun. And just expanding in that way has been interesting. So it's been good.
You know, it's interesting when you add to the team, and I think that really resonates with our listeners as well. You know, it's this piece of, it's like, thank goodness help has arrived.
Yes.
But at the same time, you're like, oh my goodness, it in the short term, it really is almost more work.
Oh yeah. And it's interesting because you've got this help and they're more than happy to help you with stuff, but they don't know exactly what to do or how to do it or what that looks like. And so it's been a challenge because we've been working on a lot of internal systems on our end, as well as onboarding a new employee, working on client stuff. And it can be overwhelming. It can be a lot. So cautiously, I have been just one step at a time.
I think it's so good for you to say, you know, it can be overwhelming because even when you come from kind of the operations systems mindset, I mean, we have so many entrepreneurs that don't have that kind of operations system tech piece. So that on its own is overwhelming.
Yes.
And then you need to go through these changes and pieces. And so I know for our agency, about 5-6 months ago, we made a fairly significant kind of tech transition. We moved from Asana to ClickUp. And, you know, timing realistically probably couldn't have been worse.
Never is good.
And it was like, okay, but this is realistically also what our clients go through is that you're going along and things are working or not working that well, but they're going.
Yeah.
And then it's, you know, all of a sudden you really hit some success and sales increase, team size increases, whatever that kind of boosted capacity is. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, systems are potentially not really what we need them to be.
Yeah.
And now you're kind of making that switch.
Yeah.
Really not the greatest time.
Well, and that's something I tell my clients all the time, because ironically, this is exactly what I help my clients go through and like actually support them through this process, because it can be a lot. It can be really emotionally taxing, you know, without realizing it, because you're going through an energetic up level at the same time that you're trying to logically build the back end of your business. So it can be a lot in that sense. But as I've been moving through it, it's like, oh, well, we just did this. Let's repurpose this. And now it's part of our process. And now we can just house it. So the first step was just coming up with that frame to be able to build inside of and be able to leverage that. And then as we've been building for clients and building for ourselves, we've just kind of been adding the layers to it, which has been super helpful. But yeah, by especially having an ops background or like that process mind, more so than the creative sometimes, it can be a lot even for someone like me. And that's exactly why like I'm like, guys, don't worry, we got you. Like, we're here for you. It's just, same thing with your agency, I'm sure.
Absolutely, 100%. And often really it's kind of a mindset piece of, I mean, usually it's not coming at, like I said, not at the greatest of timing. But it's a good problem to have. Like we're growing and it's, we're adding team or we're adding clients or whatever that is. So now we need to increase the capacity. But there's also kind of a shift that needs to happen within the organization to allow for those pieces to happen. And we spoke about it on a previous episode, but kind of shying away from that kind of discomfort and leveling up and almost being like, I'm not ready and thinking small. And instead, we talked about really leaning in and to being uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yes. It's embracing the suck is what I like to refer to it as.
Yes.
Because there are elements that are just, man, they're going to feel really heavy and it's going to feel like it's sludge brownie, like you're just in the thick of it. And I literally tell all of my clients this, like it will feel like not fun. And then on the other side of it, it feels so much lighter and being on the back end. But it is a huge mindset shift because as, service-based business owners, we start the business on our own. We're the only ones serving clients. We're also the only ones driving the bus. And to be able to kind of pass and delegate off to team members or, even if you outsource, like for example, the first thing I outsourced was my social media because it was taking up the most amount of my time. And now I just go, here you go, team, and they take care of it. But it took them, it took me taking that leap of faith and just like seeing if I liked the process in order to really dive into, oh, I have my time back. This is actually really great. And sometimes, it's never going to be good timing, but you just kind of work with what you got and you have to take that first step and just try it. Like just see if you like it because that's the only way you're going to know one way or the other. Just like, you didn't know if you liked the business you're building until you started doing it. So it's the same kind of an idea for sure.
100%. It's interesting. Social media is often, I find social media is either the one that people hold on to the longest because they love it, or it's the first one to go because they're like, oh my goodness, I did not sign up for being like a social media influencer.
Right.
I don't want to be a content creator. I just want to run my business.
Yeah. Like, this is not what I signed up for. I'm confused. Yeah. And honestly, that I laugh because it's usually either the first or the last also with my clients. And I'm like, why are you still holding on to this? And I love the word that you used like a little bit ago, allow. Like you have to allow it to be easier and allow that support to come in too. Because I know for the longest time I resisted it and I, had a couple VAs. They did good work. They were cool people. Loved working with them, but it just wasn't like jiving for me specifically. And it wasn't until I started allowing better support and, the things that I actually wanted to come in that the right person showed up and was like, I'm all in. And now we're like same wavelength, which is super cool. So yeah, definitely a release of control and an opening to allow is a really excellent visual for that.
Yeah, in my own business, I really think about like triage. I really triage my whole life, if I'm going to be honest. And I'm like, okay, broken arm, even if it's a compound fracture, not important if we're having a heart attack.
Nope.
So as much as we probably in some other situations would be concerned about the fractured arm, right now, we're going to put that off to the side and we're just going to deal with this.
Yep.
And so allowing, like you said, allowing some of these pieces to happen, and at one point you're not ready to allow someone to assist on things that are really important to you.
Yeah.
But as your business grows and shifts, you have to be willing to let go of some of the things to make room for other things. Otherwise, no one's doing the other things.
Right. And that's so true. And it's interesting you say that because the question that just popped into my mind was like, well, how do you know what things you should be working on? Like, how do you prioritize inside of the triage of your business? And I was thinking back on like a checklist that I made myself. Like when I start my day, I only ever have 3 things that I'm focused on. Because anything more than that, my brain cannot function. Like usually one of those things is taking care of me. Like, what am I going to do to bring joy for myself today? Well, today has been a little bit of guitar. I'm going to go and work out later. Like that's taking care of me. And then the second is like, how can I serve my clients and show up for them really well today? And that's, working on client projects, if I've gotten specific about that. And the more specific you are, the easier it is to feel accomplished in the day, which is interesting. And then the third piece is always, what can I do for my own business? Like, how can I build this to what it is I'm trying to get to? Because if you don't have that lens of it, you're going to feel stuck where you're at for a very long time. And I think that's, going back to that CEO mentality, it's okay, I'm driving the ship, but like, where's it going? Like, where actually are we trying to go to?
This episode is brought to you by Eleanor. Eleanor helps you create an automated business and provides a custom-tailored solution to track conversions and metrics, deliver workflows, and provide you with all of the tools you need to succeed. Eleanor ensures you can go from an overwhelmed business owner to a confident CEO that has more time, less stress, and bigger profits. As a listener of the show, you can get 25% off with the discount code SOCIETY. Go to eleanor.io and use code SOCIETY. That's ELENORE.io, discount code SOCIETY. It's interesting because we have this, especially as a business is growing, if you start as a solopreneur and you're doing all of these roles. And so you've got this time where you're working in the business, you're performing the services, if you're doing the piece for the client, and then you're working on the business and creating the strategy and growing things and setting up systems and stuff. And realistically, as the business grows, you need to do more and more of that. But, I often see, and I'm sure you see the same thing where, the focus continues to be on in the business almost too long. And then the on the business stuff starts to really suffer.
Yeah.
And I often say, that really is the driving when you said, steering the ship. It's absolutely, because if you're not taking those times to kind of check in and say, okay, are we still on course? It's like the ocean's pretty big and you can let it coast for, short spurts and you're not, but every once in a while you have to be like, are we still on course?
Yep.
Because otherwise, by the time you look up, and you're like, oh, we are really at the wrong spot. We should have made it's a slight adjustment early.
Yeah.
But, if you leave it too long, suddenly you're like, well, we took the long way for sure.
Right. And sometimes it's scenic. And ironically, it takes those mistakes in order to go back and be like, wait, we've been here before. Let's, self-correct this. And it's funny you say that too, because usually it is those little shifts that make a huge difference later on down the line. And working on the business versus in the business is literally, that is the shift from solopreneur or service-based entrepreneur to CEO. Like when you start, it doesn't matter if you have an employee or not. When you start to expand the business is when you start to flip that switch in your mind. Like, okay, where do I actually want to end up? And, you don't, so many people have heard this expression, but like, you don't get on an airplane if you don't, like, the plane knows exactly where it's going. If you're flying into Phoenix, that's where the plane's going. You get on the plane, you go to Phoenix, and you're there. There is no question as to like, oh, I wonder where I'll end up today. Like, no, you know exactly where you're going. And business is the same, especially as you're growing and you're scaling. And you have to understand what it is you want it to look like so that you can reverse engineer the plan in order to get to where you want to go, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Kind of comes back to, really ensuring that you have the data, that the systems are giving you the information you need.
Yeah.
And, people shy away from the word data as much as they shy away from the words CEO.
Oh yeah.
But realistically, sometimes I say like, forget about, all of the data calculation, analytics, forget about all the words and let's just focus on, does it make sense?
Yeah.
Are you on track to be where you want to be? And if not, how much are we missing by and what are we going to do?
Yep.
And kind of, forget the words that make the retraction happen and instead just lean in and say, okay, like, where do we want to be?
Yep.
Where are we now? What is it's a road trip realistically. Let's figure out the path to get there.
Yeah. Sometimes you stop for gas and sometimes you stop for snacks and you have to have a little bit of both. What would you say if you were talking to a service-based business owner that's growing and maybe they're at like that 5K mark or they're just starting? and they're wanting to get to that 10, 15, 20K months, like what would you tell them to look at most in terms of like data or numbers? Because that is a CEO, like that's a CEO opportunity to understand where your business is going. When I started blowing up in business, it's because I really started looking at my own numbers, particularly my finances, and understanding why they were happening and what I was doing in order to influence them. And that's my personal experience. I started doing that in January because I had to do my taxes. I had to finish out last year. And then I was like, oh, and then I made some adjustments, and this year's been really, really good comparatively, which is cool. So what would you say to a service-based business owner that's kind of on that uphill trend in terms of like what to focus on or look at?
So my history, like my previous education at the undergraduate level, is in accounting. So often, I default to the financials 100%.
Love that.
That's where I go. But I think often, it's kind of what you just said about, well, I got to January and I was doing my taxes, and that is the entrepreneur story. Is we don't have financials. We have, a tax return at the end of the year. And so we're not making those minor adjustments through the year.
Right.
We don't really know how much money we're making or not making. If there's money in the bank, well, we're making money. And if there's no money in the bank, then we're not making money.
Right.
And so, but that's not often actually reflective of the true story. And so one of the first things that I realistically try to get to with businesses and clients is, what are the fixed costs of your business?
Yep.
What do we have to make no matter what? If we stopped actually working tomorrow, what are these fixed costs? And then what are the variable costs? What are the costs that go up? If you sell another job, your costs go up. If you sell less jobs, your costs go down.
Yep.
And the end goal there is to figure out what is the profit of these jobs that you're doing.
Yep.
Because, a lot of times we're nowhere close to be covering the fixed expenses.
Right.
Or, certain kinds of work is super profitable, and there's other work that is not profitable and is really, and it's like, okay, let's do a little less of that.
Yep.
And, there will always be some people say, oh, that's kind of, like it's almost a marketing piece.
Yep.
I get them in the door. That's great. That is a conscious management decision.
Yep.
But if you don't know the numbers, that is not a conscious decision. That's just you weighing it.
Yeah, well, it's a conscious decision to be, ignorant is a strong word, but ignorant to what it is that's actually happening. And it's a choice to know, or it's a choice to not know. Also, like equally. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I was listening to something recently, and they said that not making a choice is a choice.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like,
that was the expression I was looking for.
Yes, I was like, well, that's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that waiting, it's that like analysis paralysis, and just kind of waiting until the decision realistically has been made for you, because the time passed and you didn't make a choice.
Yeah. And that in itself can be powerful, especially as you're going through, and, sometimes not making those decisions is like make or break. Like, okay, well, let's say you're wanting to speak more at summits, or you're wanting to get on more podcasts or things like that. Like, okay, that's fine. You also have to choose to fill out the applications and like put in the effort and the work to actually find those things, and the right opportunities will come to you. But if you're just sitting there looking at an application and you choose not to fill it out, you're essentially also choosing the consequences on the other side of that. It's just like if you've decided you want to lose weight, but you choose not to go to the gym, there's going to be consequences. Do you have to go to the gym in order to achieve your goals? No, but if you've decided that's what's important to getting there, like as part of your process or your journey, then that's important. And then that kind of ties in with like the corporate world talks about OKRs and KPIs and like those key performance indicators. All those are, and this is, there's a book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution, which is just a fantastic leadership book, but they talk about lead measures and lag measures. And all those words is the effort it takes to get from where you are to where you want to be. And then how do you know you've made it there? So the lead measures are everything you've done up until that point you're looking for, or that result you're looking for. And a lag measure is everything after the fact. So, number of followers on Instagram, that's a lag measure. You have absolutely no control over that. You can control how many times you post, what content you put out, the quality of your content, reels, not reels, stories, polls, whatever. Those are all lead measures. And so when you start to understand your numbers from that perspective, and this goes for, that was a content example, but this goes for sales, it goes for messaging, it goes for, literally every piece of the business. If you don't understand why you're doing the things you're actually spending time doing, you're just wasting a crap ton of time, genuinely. And life is way too short for that BS.
Isn't that the truth? Back in my corporate days, we really did a lot of that, KPIs and OKRs. And I definitely talk through the process with a lot of my clients, but in a different way. And so if I go back to the time of the corporate KPIs and OKRs, it used to be a meeting every month. It was like 4 hours long. And it was one of those, could have been an email type meetings. I'm like, oh my goodness, don't fall asleep. Because realistically, you have a bunch of different managers from a bunch of different departments. So you've got someone from accounting, you've got someone from sales, you've got someone from all of these different, more service related pieces. And everyone is talking about the data points that are relevant to them.
Yep.
And so number one, that's not really what's relevant to someone in accounting is not relevant to they're different data points and different data measures. But you also have a varying level of, different things we're examining. And I remember so clearly someone saying that one of, their OKRs, their objective was to be the very best in the industry. And it's like, okay, so how do we measure that?
Yeah. How do you know when you've hit it?
How do you know when you've got there? And they're like, well, we'll just be the best. And it's like, but that's not actually like, what is the scale? Who is deciding what the best means? I mean, it's very different if you have like a public company and you've got, we're comparing financials and we're saying this specific data, but on like a private business, who's the best? Well, whoever thinks, it's like, well, that's very matter of opinion.
And it's hard to say. And this is where the CEO piece comes in, is like, okay, well, if the CEO is driving the bus, what's important to the CEO? Because it's important to the company. And when you get into the leadership side and you have, whether it's a team of 1 or a team of 3, you have to have some kind of greater vision or greater plan for what you're trying to accomplish. And I remember very distinctly at the beginning of this year, really sitting down and being like, what is this company? Because that's what it is. This is a business. This is a company. What does this company actually stand for? Like, why are we in business? Why are we operating? And really getting to the root of those kinds of questions helped me to be able to understand like what actually is most important for us to be doing and creating and serving, and how, and making sure that it's all in alignment. Because outside of alignment, it means we're not actually working towards the goal that we've set. So for example, like something we've been working on is we want to help people live their actual lives instead of being stuck in their business, working, ungodly hours in the business, because that sucks. Life's too short for that. I could literally get hit by a bus tomorrow. Like your dog could pass away tomorrow. Like, that's morbid, but when you face the reality of the fact that time is the finite resource that we have, you start to think a little bit differently. And then you can use that and start to develop, okay, well, if that's our goal, if we want to help people get unstuck, what's the fastest, most direct, impactful way that we can do that? Well, we're going to shift into some group coaching programs and move a little bit away from the one-to-one stuff. Things like that. You start to make decisions based off of the larger vision versus the temporary now. And it's a really hard transition, including cash flow. And I don't think a lot of people talk about this. Like, when you make a decision as a CEO that's uncomfy, but it's where you're going, that transition period, that flux sucks. It absolutely sucks. And managing the cash flow, managing expectations, managing clients, yourself, like that is a lot of layers of cake. And that's like a 7-layer cake right there at a minimum. Like, there's a lot to it. So yeah, I don't know that a lot of people are talking about that. That's something to ruminate on, I suppose.
No, it's interesting because, the businesses who are most likely to run out of cash in a cash flow situation are businesses that are in high growth.
Yeah.
And, it made worse if you have terms. Like if you're a business with 30-day terms and most businesses with 30-day terms don't have an actual average collection rate of 30 days.
Right.
Let's call a spade a spade.
Yep.
And so, industry like more typical that I have seen is going to be more like, mid 40s on a 30-day terms. And so now you have paid out all the expenses for these sales. And so great, sales are increasing. That means expenses are also increasing.
Yeah.
And so when you're not collecting that right on time, you start to see a problem because now the cash is not coming in. And so a lot of times in those moments, things start, now you're the busiest your business has been, you're growing, it's great. But now there's this, we'll get to the invoicing. A lot of times if you don't have someone on your team who's doing the accounting or the bookkeeping or however that system is done, it's like, oh, you get home late. You're like, oh, I'll invoice tomorrow. Invoice tomorrow. So now you're starting your 30-day terms late because you didn't actually get the invoice done.
Right.
And then you're collecting late because that's just the way that it's going to go. Yep. And so that cash is out, but it's not being collected right away. Right. And that for massively successful businesses, they just run out of cash.
Yeah, which is a terrible thing to happen. And that was something that I've experienced that in my business is like at the beginning of this year, I was running terms for, one of my offers. It was a $500 deposit and then 2 monthly payments after the fact. Well, by the time that the service was done, I still had to wait an additional 30 days or more in order to get that second monthly payment. I was literally choking out my cash flow because even though the service was done, provided the client was satisfied and happy and it was awesome, I choked myself of cash flow really badly. In an effort to increase cash flow later, what it actually did was prevented me from growing in the right now. And so it was an interesting, as soon as I removed that $500 deposit and I just said it's pay in full or it's 2 payments and like that's it, cash flow fixed itself immediately. And it's hard when you're in it, especially from the perspective of, oh, we need cash because we have bills to pay, we have kids to feed, the numbers go on and the list goes on. You have to manage your own expectations about what it is you're trying to do and also how to get there. Like there's a little bit of strategy in this is what we're doing, this is the plan, and I'm 100% like going to be okay if everything hits the fan and doesn't end up the way that I think it's going to play out, but I know it'll be okay. Like there's that balance of like abundance and like, the woo with the work on like together. They have to be together. Otherwise it's an emotional roller coaster of hell. Like
just to put it mildly,
just super casually. Yeah.
Whoever said that, working for yourself was easier. I don't know.
No, I wholeheartedly disagree. And I worked for somebody else, but I was my own boss in what I was doing. And it's harder than that even. And I'm like, wow, I had so many things I didn't have to worry about previously. It's an interesting dichotomy for sure.
Yeah, there's always the funny like TikToks and things about, like I didn't want to work 9 to 5. So now I work 24 hours a day and those kinds of things. And I personally have been really trying to take some of my hours back. Because, that we like automate a lot of things and you do the same. And then I take that time and instead of being like, oh, I created all this time, I'm like, oh, I can take on more things.
Yeah, I can absorb these other things. Yeah.
Look at the capacity we created. And then it's like, oh my goodness. So one of the big shifts that I just recently made, because coming into, school kids being off for summer and whatnot, I was like, okay, so I'm not really sure how my schedule is going to work.
Yeah.
As it's currently presented. So, and I am very guilty I like working late. I've always been a work late. It's quiet, you kind of get in the vibe, but before you know it, it's late.
Yeah, like 2, 3 a.m. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're like, oh no, look at the time. So
gotta be up at 6, like, oops.
I know, guilty.
Same.
So, but it's like, I'm just doing what I like to do. And, you get working on something and you don't even really notice.
Yeah.
And so, but I have been trying to go to bed way earlier, like when I put the kids to bed and like sleep first.
Yeah.
and then get up. And it's like, so now I'm like getting up when I used to go to bed. And it's like this very weird transition. But I'm like, oh my goodness, I feel better because I'm getting more consistent sleep.
Yeah.
And it's like, even though it's not like regular hours, it's still more of a routine. And I'm a routine kind of girl.
Yep.
So it was a bit of a struggle before. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try this out for a while. The
Yeah.
only part that is like really tough with the new schedule is that the husband time is not really in alignment because I'm like, okay, it's time for bed. He's like, it's 8:00. I'm like,
he's like, what are you talking about? And you're like, yep, peace out. Like, have a great night. Yeah. And that time is also really important. And that's something that a lot of my clients go through as well, is like, okay, well, this is what I want. And this is, as the CEO, where does your time actually need to be focused? Because there's a very fine line between doing the things that absolutely light you up as a service provider, because that's where your zone of genius is. Your butt should be there as much as humanly possible. And you run a business. So there's always going to be stuff that you don't necessarily love doing. Like, I know for a fact I would love to be able to sleep in every morning, but there are some mornings where like I choose not to because it's important to what I'm building. And that can be a lot, just like with, being intentional with your time and being intentional with your schedule. One thing I've been looking at is like, okay, what actually do I need to be involved with? What makes me happy versus not? And if it doesn't make me happy, or if I'm not the only person that can do it, we got to slide that off my plate as quick as humanly possible. And there's a little bit of a transition time and a requirement of like releasing it off of your plate. But as soon as you do, then you have to be like, oh, this is exactly what I asked for, and allow yourself that time to be doing your flow and like in that zone of genius and like really flipping excited about that. And being intentional about like, okay, well, now that I have the free time, I'm going to, take that time with my husband. I'm going to schedule that thing that I've been trying to do for freaking months. Or I'm going to, for me, it's golfing with my dad sometimes, as like dumb as that sounds. We'll just literally go to the driving range like on a Tuesday, if the schedule will allow it, because he's a contractor, he can work his own schedule, and so am I. So that it's kind of fun, but you have to not feel guilty about it. And that's been really hard for me, for sure. Yeah.
It's funny that you say that, because as you were talking, I was like, and it's just not allowing the guilt to take over. And you're like, and not feel guilty. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yes.
That guilt will
because you
shut
do.
You down.
You're like, I should be working.
Yeah.
I should be working. And it's like, okay, but you did the work. You did like, and now you're good. Everything is like at a good place. And now you're supposed to be enjoying the benefit of, something else. I had these visions when I left my job that I was going to be like, we have this super cute little like breakfast place where I live. It's like all, vegan, crunchy. They make their granola, amazing chai lattes, super cute. And I'm like, oh, I could like drop my 2 oldest off at school, and my littlest and I can go for like those cute little yogurt granola breakfasts. And this is going to be great. And I can tell you that in a year, it has happened once.
Yeah.
One time. And I was like, I better take a picture because I don't know when I'll be back.
And see, that's so funny that you say that, because as I've noticed, like when I am like, oh yeah, why did you start your business? It's to do those yogurt dates, to do those granola dates, because that's what life is freaking about. Like, it's about the relationships. It's about the time that we're spending doing the things we absolutely love doing. Like, I can tell you for a fact, working outside is one of my all-time favorite things of all time. I literally contemplate moving states so I can do it more months out of the year, because I live in Ohio. Like, and summer is the only time that I can enjoy the heck out of this. But if you're not intentionally doing that, you are consciously saying that's not actually the life you want to live. And there's a part of you that's still playing small, because you don't think that you can have the other side of it. And as soon as that switch flipped for me, it was like, and then business exploded, because I stopped doing the things that I was like, I should be doing this. Like, I should be, like, for example, I have a Facebook group. I don't use it. I really don't use it a lot. I don't know that I want to have a Facebook group, because I love Instagram. And so therefore, that was one of those things that, like, yeah, I should do this because it's a really good strategy. I can leverage it. But now it's just $60 expense in my accounting that I'm not leveraging right now, that I don't really need right now. So it's like, why am I still doing this thing even though I feel like I don't need it? And it's just releasing the shoulds, like literally just letting them walk right out the door. It doesn't matter what guru told you to do it, who's really successful at it. If it does not feel 100% in alignment with what you want, it's a no. It's a no.
Yes. It really comes back to that it's your business. And so you get to make the call. It's like you have to deal with the consequences, good or bad, and you get to make the call. I was working through some like it was very creative type task. And the client was really like, could go this way, could go that way. I said, just so you know, neither are wrong.
There's no wrong answer.
There's no wrong answer. This is totally personal preference. So what you might personally prefer is very like is different than you could survey 100 people. It doesn't matter. I said, but none of it matters. It's yours. You got and it was kind of like this, almost like the permission to just make a call and realize that it's up to you. Good or bad. It's on you.
I think that's probably the most fun piece that I work with my clients on is like, okay, well, but like, how do you want to do this? I don't care what Sally, social media lady, said. I don't care what that coach over there told you. Like, what feels good for you? What feels fun? Like, that is probably the best question that you can ask yourself is like, what feels fun right now to do in business? And then you create a baseline minimum of what it actually takes to do what you want. And it's usually not that much. It's not as far as you think it is. It's not that much harder than what you actually think it is. And that's powerful. That permission slip is mind blowing because that's usually when everything clicks. You ask anybody that's had a really fast growth burst, like, or that goes, oh, I had, $30,000 month and it happened overnight. Like those kinds of stories. No, it's not overnight. They just had a really big mindset shift and they let go of the stuff that was actually dragging them down and they started doing more of the stuff that was lighting them up. Hands down. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And remembering that those people that are saying those stories that, the people who are having the opposite aren't sharing as loudly. And, because it's, you get online and sometimes it's almost people like, oh, but, so-and-so's got this business and they're selling this and they're doing that. And it's like, okay, but people who aren't like, top are not sharing.
Right. Or if they are, it just looks like, oh, but they do X, Y, Z, or they spend X in ads, or they do, these strategies. And it's like, it's so far removed from where you feel like you're at as a service provider that sometimes it takes finding that person that's like 1/2 step above you, or like they've just done it, or they're, 2 years removed from it in order for you to go, oh, wait, I'm actually way closer than I realized. And that's a huge, that makes a huge difference for sure.
Absolutely. So if you had one tip to, give to our listeners that they could implement today and would make a difference in their business tomorrow, what would that be?
Oh gosh. If I only had to pick one thing, go look at your calendar. This is going to be, I every single farkin' time. Yeah, that's a word. Every time I do this, it makes a really, really huge impact. If I've looked at my calendar and there is an audit that takes place, if there's something I do not like on my calendar, there's nothing else that goes on it like it ever again. Because if I don't like that piece, or if I've spent my time doing something I don't want to be doing, and you can get it off your plate, do it. Example, I really, really don't like, this is like a hard example because I don't let these things on my calendar, but I don't take sales calls unless it's actually a sales call. This is a perfect example. I don't typically do coffee chats because to me, I love connecting. I can do that in a DM. I can do that in a voice note via DM. I don't necessarily need to jump on a 15 or 30-minute phone call and, have a conversation with you, understand your whole background story. Like, I'm a very intuitive person and I can get it pretty quick. And I just want to know in a one-liner sentence, how can I really support you? How can I help you? And a lot of times I'll take care of that in the DMs within the first couple of minutes, like how we're growing together, how we can support each other. Awesome. If there is, something that pops up on my calendar and I'm like, yeah, I don't know, I'll just evaluate it, like determine whether you want it on there or not. That being said, also, the first thing that goes into my calendar is fun. As backwards as that is, I plan my necessities, which is always my family time and me time, because those are non-negotiables to me. Those are on the calendar in stone no matter what. After that, what fun do I want to have? I go line dancing on Wednesday nights a couple times a month because I love it, because it makes me happy. And the more happy you put in your calendar, you're going to see really, really big shifts start to kind of come from the waves of that. And if there's not a lot of things that bring you joy on your calendar, what the heck are we doing on this planet, man? Like, I literally got a tattoo. Life's too short. It's not that serious. Like, so
That's
that
amazing.
That would be my best advice, is like, life's too short and it's not that serious. So make sure you're, big fun into it. You can be doing work and doing the serious things without dying internally.
Yes. Yeah, there's an aunt. She's a business coach, Sarah Dan.
Yes,
I don't know if you know her. She has been doing business coaching for a long time, and she doesn't do sales calls. And she sells like some high ticket programs. I just saw something in on Facebook. I think it was like it was like a 10K offer kind of thing.
Yeah,
no sales call.
You don't need it. A lot of times, if the right client will know exactly that they want to, and this goes back to knowing where you're driving the bus and how you're serving your clients on the way there. When your messaging and your marketing strategy is really dialed in so that the right people that follow you know exactly what it is you can help them with, they're going to know that they want to work with you or not within seconds of landing on your page. And then from there, no, you don't need a sales call. It's, how does this work? What does this look like? Then the questions after that are, okay, are you going to let your own BS stop you? Or is there some other question that I haven't answered yet? That's it. Like, I don't even want to do sales calls most of the time. I usually don't. I'm like, yep, here it is. This is what I do. Boom, boom, boom. Check my website. Because that's where the rest of the information's at. Like, it's fantastic. Yeah.
There you go. So what is that website? Where can people find you?
So my website is purposefullyproductive.com. I know it's a mouthful, but it is intentionally created because we want to save you time and, make sure that you move with intention in your life. So purposefullyproductive.com, and my Instagram handle is the same, at purposefullyproductive. And that's usually where I chill out most, because Instagram is fire. Also considering starting a TikTok, but TBD.
No TikTok yet.
Not
okay.
yet. We haven't broken into it yet. It sounds like a good idea, but I just haven't carved the intentional time to do it the way that I want. Yes. And that's the other thing. I'm not going to half-ass something. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to go all in, and I'm going to do it the way that I want to do it, not just because I've taken it on my plate. So that's big.
Thank you so much, Sam. It's been so nice to have you here and chat.
I appreciate you having me. It's been a really, really huge blast, and I can't wait if you guys have any questions. I'm in the DMs all the dang time.
Awesome. That sounds great.
Good, Tiffany. Thank you so much.
Well, we are all out of time for today. If you guys have not joined the Service-Based Business Society Facebook community, make sure you head on over to Facebook and we can continue the conversation. Be sure to also follow the show by going to any podcast app and searching Service-Based Business Society. Click subscribe, click the 5th star, and leave us a written review. Have a great week, and we will see you soon.